In this video, I'm going to try to go over some of the important questions that you may want to know about when you have to take an exam. And this exam is for a job related exam, not for some of the Microsoft certifications. I'm not aware what topics they cover in it. So this is strictly for job related questions where a lot of employers and even some employment agency will make you take a test for Microsoft Access. So I'm hoping that if you have never used Microsoft Access, please go and watch the first 4 videos of the Access 2007 series, so you'll have a better idea, and then you can watch this to improve on your understanding. So I'm hoping in like 25 to 30 minutes I'm going to try to cover all the important things. So the first thing they may ask you is open a table. So they say open the employees table. So you just double click on it. And to close just the table, you just click on the X in the right hand corner. That will close this table. You can right click on it, and most of the exams I believe they'll allow you to do right click, so you can right click on it and you can choose to rename it, and you can also delete it. And from here you can also go to the design view, which is where you design the table. You can also double click on it, and then from here you can go to the design view, the left hand corner button. However, sometimes this button they don't allow you to use it, or if you try that, they don't accept it as the right answer. So you have to click in the drop down button in the exam and then go to design view. So this is what the design view looks like. And they might ask you a question about changing the primary key. So say for example they say that change the primary key to the cell number. So you click on it and then you click on the primary key. So that is the way you change the primary key, and I can click on something and I can change that to primary key. If they ask you to insert a row between some of the fields and add a new field in the table, so if I click on the last name and if I click insert row, it will add a row right above it, and then up here I can say put middle name. Now if I come to the front end, which is the data sheet view, so you might get a question about it, so you can click on the drop down button and then go to the data sheet view, say yes to saving it, and now there's the middle name, and then I can put the middle names there. I can come back to the design view. They might ask you a question about input mask. So they'll say that for the telephone number, put an input mask so that the telephone number show up with brackets and the hyphen. So you click on the cell phone number and look in the field properties on the bottom, and you'll see a option called input mask. Input mask allows you to set these types of patterns that are common to everybody. And then you click on the dots at the end. You shouldn't get that message. It's just that my computer is set up like that. Phone number, there is the phone number, but you'll see they have also things for zip code or social security number, which is the American, and the zip code, and I've created some for postal codes and things. So there's a lot of things in here which can be set up. So input mask, I click on the phone number. You can go through the whole next, or you can just finish it and it adds it. Now if I come to save it if I want, and I come to the data sheet view, so now you see the telephone numbers have that. Come back to design view. They might ask you a question that for birth date, set the data type to, they might say set it to date and time. So you click it and you can set it to date and time. And now I can come to the data sheet view, say yes to saving it, and then I can set any birth dates, pick a date and then change the birth year. But they won't ask you that type of a question, but they'll surely ask you to change the data types. Data types are these guys. So sometimes they might say change a text to a memo. Memo means you can write a whole lot. They might ask you to set a data type to currency, because it's a dollar value. So if it's there, they might ask you to do that. For city, if I wanted, I can create like a drop down button from which I can pick a list of cities. So to do that, you click on the drop down button and then you start the lookup wizard, and then you choose I will type the values that I want. Click next, and then you click in this drop down button here, and then you can type your list here, whatever the list is. Next, and then finish it. Now if I come back to data sheet view, say yes to saving it, and if I click in the city, now I have the drop down button. Okay. So just quickly, I'm just going to right click on the products, go to design view, and for the price I can set this to currency. So now when I come to the data sheet view, it's now put the dollar signs for me. So that's the idea. In many cases they'll ask you a few questions about primary keys and adding a new field and things like that in the design. I'm just going to close this. Now if they ask you to create a new table, like a brand new table, they wanted you to create a table for orders or something, or usually it will be very simple. They won't ask you to do something that will take too many steps. So if you go to create, from here you can create using a table templates, and usually the question will be very specific. They'll tell you where to go, so you can go through them, or you can go through table design and then you can start creating a brand new table. I'm going to come back to the home tab and I'm going to double click on, say, employees table, and they'll say add a new record. So you could do it a couple of different ways. You can just click on this new button and then they'll say fill in the information. So then you just need to fill in the information that they give you. Make sure you are very specific, and the exam you can actually either click in there or you can even use the tab key on the keyboard to navigate to the next section. If they ask you to delete a record, so from the drop down button here there is the delete record button, or if it's already highlighted like this, you could just click on delete. And a lot of time in the exam you'll find that the things are already highlighted, so they've already done a few things there, so you don't have to do much. So you just have to know where the buttons are and then just click on it. I'm also going to double click on the products. They might also ask you to sort things. So say if I click on the price, and they might say sort it by the higher price to the low price. So to do that you have to do the Z to A sorting. So you can click on Z to A. So now you see it goes from high to low, and you don't need to highlight anything, it does that. And you can also do it from here. You can click here and then you can sort A to Z, and then from here. So you see, at least here it tells you largest to smallest. When I click here in the product name, it will say A to Z, which is putting things in alphabetical order. But up here it understands that it's got numbers, so it does that. I'll just come to the employees. They might say that I'm just going to put one more Jones here, or it could be anything, and they'll say filter your records for Jones only. So you can click on the Jones, and in the selection button you can say equal to Jones, and you only get Jones, and then you can toggle, which is to remove the filter. They may not ask that kind of a question, but you can do it from there. And you can also do the filtering from this drop down button, where you can click it and then you can just remove all. Click on select all, so it removes them all, and then just choose Jones and then click OK, and it does the same thing that I was able to do it from selection, and I can toggle to remove it. They might ask you questions about finding or replacing things. So if I go to the find button, so there is the find button, if I click it, and then I can say, they say find dough, so I can just type dough, and I can type dough in there. And the only thing to watch out for here is that in the look in, you see it's saying employee ID, and it's not going to find dough in the employee ID. But in the exam, you'll find that all the rest of the fields are properly selected. They just want you to type the name there after you clicked on the find button and then just find. But in my case, I'll have to change this to the whole table so that it finds it. Otherwise, it will not find it. And I haven't seen those type of questions where they start asking you these other values where any part of the field or start of the field becomes applicable. So I just hit find next and it gets highlighted. Now make sure you hit the find next, otherwise you haven't answered it. And usually you'll get a sense of it when you try to answer whether you've answered it right or not, because the pop-up will show up, and a lot of time they'll allow you to repeat it so you can repeat the question. So I can just close this window. And in the same way, you can also use the replace option. If they ask you to find a name of a company and replace it with a new name of the company, you can do that. And also there is an option. So if I'm just going to click here on the third row, go to, and from here I can go to first. So it just jumps to first. And you can also get to the first on the bottom. There is this symbol here. This symbol stands for first record. This one stands for last record. So you might get questions about that, saying go to first or last. So you can do it from there. They might ask you some questions about row heights or maybe column width. So that can be done from more, and then you choose row height and then type the number they've given you and click OK. Or you can go to more, column width, and then type the number. So sometimes you'll find that they've already highlighted the rows they want you to affect. The columns or the rows. Because in Access, if you change one row, all of them are changed, and you can also do it from here. But when you go there in the corner, look for that symbol and you can go move it up and down. But you cannot type the right number here. So to do that, you'll have to go to more, and then from there. You can also hide rows. So you see that when I click here, there is a columns. So if I click it, now that column is hidden. So I can hide as many columns I want, and I can click here. I can go to unhide and then choose to bring the column back. I can also choose to freeze a column. So if I click here, I go to more, so that column will be frozen, and I choose freeze. So what it does is it puts the column on the left hand side, so that if I had a whole lot of columns and I was going sideways, this column will always stay there. So just to show you, I'm just going to make this, increase it. And now if I move that to the side, you see that last name always stays there because it is frozen. So whatever column they want you to freeze, you can freeze it from there. If you want to move it, you go back here and unfreeze it. Now you click on the last name on the top, point to it, left click and hold it, and I can drag it to move it to wherever I want it. So that's the way you move things. And you can also find some of these options when you right click. You'll find options to hide, unhide, freeze, and unfreeze. You can also choose to rename the heading, the last name, to something else, and you can also delete the column. So those options are also here. You might get a question like they might have certain things highlighted like this, and they might say that without going to design view or something like that, and they'll say make these fields required. That means you cannot skip it. So you can go to the table tools, and in there is this check mark here is required. That means middle name is required. I cannot leave it empty. So you might see that question that you may need to answer. So is required. It's under the table tools. When you go to the design view, you'll find that if I click on the first name, and in the field properties, you'll see a field called required. So that's where it can also be set individually. So from there, I can do it all together. And while I'm here, I'm also going to talk about two fields. So if I click on city, I can click on default value. So you might get a question saying that in the design view, make that default value for this field to be whatever. So if I type Toronto, now if I come to the data sheet view, every new record will automatically have Toronto, which is the default value. And the last thing I'll talk about in terms of tables, to wrap the table part, is how to do relationships. So you may get a question about it, so I'm just going to close these. So you may find yourself either some tables are open, so you can go to database tools and you can click on relationships. So you can also get a question that look at the relationships of this file. So you just click on database tools, relationship, and then I can add the tables. Can close it, and to create a relationship I just have to drag and drop a field somewhere. So I don't know if I'll be able to do anything here in this scenario. So you just have to left click and hold it, and then you just drop it to wherever you want to do the relationship. If they ask you something about enforcing referential integrity, then there is that option. You can watch my videos, other videos, to understand these, and then this is where there are some options here too. So cascade update and cascade delete, you may see that, and then I just click create. A lot of time they don't ask you these type of questions. They just want you to know whether you can go to the relationship window. So I can just close this. So that's, you go to database tools and then relationship. They can come back to home. And just to show the relationship properly, I've gone ahead and added a new table called orders. So if I go to database tools, relationship, and I'll click on show table, and I'll add the orders table to it. So I'm just going to move this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the company name from here, and I can drop it on the company here in this. So I can creating a relationship. So that's what a relationship looks like. I'm going to take the products from here, and I'm going to drop it on this product, and I'm creating a relationship. And just going to move it up here. And I'm going to take the employee and I'm going to drop it on the employee here. And that's what a relationship looks like. You can click on it or right click, and you'll see a delete option, and you can also edit your relationships. So this is what relationships looks like. So yes to saving it. And another question, that if you wanted to, if you got something about adding subtotals or something. So if I go to my products, and they might have some field with sales value or something, and it's clicked in there somewhere. And if I click on this totals button, so it adds this new field called total. I can click in here, and then I can choose to do sum or average. So usually it's sum. Sometimes you might also get a count. So I choose sum, and it's the summation of all the numbers above it. And I can press the totals again to turn it off. I'm going to close this table, and now we'll get to the query part. So create, and you'll usually get questions about creating simple queries, nothing complicated. So if I go to, first they'll say we'll do a create query wizard, and they'll say simple query, and they'll tell you which table to use. So they'll say use the employees table, and then either add all the fields, or they'll say to use specific fields. So just make sure you read what they are saying. So you can either choose all by using the double arrow. I can remove it all with the double arrow, or you can choose some by choosing them and using the single arrow. So you can do that, and then you can click next, and then you can give it a name there, and then you can finish it if they ask you to give it a name. So the query is done. To go to the design view of the query from the home, from the down button here, you can go to design view. So some of the questions for query, you will already be in the design view, and they'll say that run a query to find this or that. So you just make sure you type that word in the criteria. So if I go to the last name criteria, I can type do, and this is how you run a query, which will most probably will be an exam question where, so there's the run button, you run it. Now I only get the results of do, which is like filtering, but this is, we are doing it from query. And if I come back to design view, I'm going to remove this criteria. If they ask you to do multiple criteria, then you need to put in each and every column as they give it to you. Another one they might ask you in a criteria is that they might say that find me all the telephone number which start with the area code, say 905. So you click on it and you type 905 star, not 8 star. Or you can put like 905 star. But even if I don't put the like, when I put 905 star and I'm going to run, that means give me only 905, which there is none. So there will be nothing there. But if I come back to design view, it will put the word like there. So if you want to be on a safe side, you can just put the word like, area code, star. The quotations are not needed. Sometimes you might find that you might already be in a query and they'll say save this query with a name. So you click on the save button. In this case, we've already saved it, but usually it will pop up asking you to give it a name. And then you just type that and you are good to go. So I'm just going to close this. Another question you might get is where they might say go to create and create a query using the query design. And all they'll say is that they'll say add employees table, add the orders table, and they might say to add something from query. So you go to queries and then you add another table. So and then you close it and you pretty much answered the question. And now at this point, if I hit save, it will ask me to give it a name. Okay, I'm just going to close this, say no to saving it. So that's under create, query design, and you just need to add the tables on that query. You may have a query asking you something about subtotals. So you'll already be in a query, so I'll just come to a query, and if they ask you to create a subtotal for something, you'll already be clicked in the proper place, and you use this totals button. So you press it and then you just choose to do a sum wherever the numbers are. So wherever the numbers are, you can do a sum there and then just hit run and you've answered the question correctly. So I think that pretty much summarizes the important things you need to know from the exam point of view to create queries and answering the questions for queries. The next thing I want to talk about is about forms. So usually they'll tell you they'll already be clicked on a table and they'll say create a form for the employee table. So you go to create. And usually in the exam, they'll say for the purpose of the exam, just use the form button rather than going through more forms and form wizard. But if they ask you to go through that, you choose the form wizard, choose the table from the list if it's not there already. Usually it should be. Choose if they say all fields or individual fields and read whether they're asking you to keep the defaults, which a lot of times they will. So I choose it. Next, so they'll say don't touch the defaults, leave it as it is, and they might tell you to give it a certain name. So I can just call it form employees and I can finish it. So it makes a form for that employee table. I can close this form just to show you. If I click on products, create, and I hit the form button, and right away it just makes the table for the products right away. And they might ask you questions like where they might say that change the look, the layout kind of a thing, the format to a certain format, and they might give you some kind of a name. And when you see that in the tools, you'll already be there in the format in the corner. If you click in the drop down button and as I point to it, you see they all have a name: Apex, Access, and Aspect. So they just have to choose the one that you need to put there. So you just click it and it will be added. And if I click on save, then I'll be able to save this form. You might get a question that you need to add a button to your form. So they may say that add a button either here that will allow people to add a new record. So to do that, I'm just going to hit the save button first and I'll just give it a name. I'll just add the word form. in front of it. And so for that, if you were in the form view, so any changes like the layouts and the buttons, you need to go to the layout view. So in the layout view, you'll see the option to change the layout. And you might see before I get to the adding a button, you might come across a question where they say that this label or this thing that is selected, the field, delete it. So if it's already clicked on, which it usually is, you just hit the delete button and the field is gone. And I'll just bring it back by using undo right now, but that's the way you answer it. And if they say that you need to add a button, then you need to go to the design view, and in here I can choose to add a button. So let's see, so I'll click, there is the button here. If you don't see it is visible, just try to remember the actual symbols. You see it's got like X on it. So and I point to it, it tells me, and in the exam I find sometimes they might tell you, sometimes not. So if I click it, and then I have to drag it somewhere. So maybe I think I'll just have to make some room here, so I'll just drag it down. But they might tell you to put it, up here in the heading or wherever. I'll just put it on the bottom. I'll click it and I'll drag it here. And then I am looking for a button that says add new record, or it could be delete a record. So I don't see it in this one, those buttons. So I'll go to record operations, and there is the delete record button or add new record. So it's already highlighted. Next, they might tell you to use a picture like this or like this, or they might just say leave it as a text, or they might even make you to add some words in it. Click next, and they might say that give it a name here like add record or add new record. So whatever name they want you to give, you have to do this, otherwise you haven't answered it right, and I can finish it. And just to show you, if I come back to the form view, there is the add new record button that will work. Okay. I can come back to design view. You might get some questions about adding text boxes. So that's the option to add a text box. You click it and you can drag it here. Labels, so that's for labels, and this is for a text box. So you just have to click it and just drag it, and usually that should be enough to answer the question. If they ask you to add like a logo, so you can use that to add a logo onto your form. So there's the logo button in the design. So I'm going to close this form and I'm going to go to the employee forms, and they might ask you a question where they'll say that below the employees form add like the orders table or something like that. So you can go to the design view, and usually there'll be room here on the bottom. In my case, I'll just make some room, and I'm looking for a button that should say Subform. Now just get a sense of it, this button here, and in the exam it might be a little bigger, but it may not tell you that that button is for Subform. So if I click it, then I come here and I'll drag it. Now make sure that you drag it below the point where they want you to drag it, otherwise you won't get it right, and you drop it. And even if you see a lot of tables listed here, you can just use the use existing tables and queries, and then just click next, and then choose the table like orders, add all, next, and usually they'll say to leave everything else default, and then just finish it up, and that will add a subform to your design. So that is from design. You look for the subform button, drag it and drop it. You may also come across questions where they might ask you to add page numbers or dates on your form. So you can do it from two ways, either from the design view. So wherever you are, you can come to design view. So I'll show it from the design view first. There is this button which is for date and time. It's got like the number on it, 5, and the time, so that's easy to spot. And then if they say just put the date, just choose that. If they say time, choose that. they want both, choose both. So I can just choose that, click OK. And if they say to add page number, so it's got the pound symbol on it, so that's the way to recognize it. You click it, and they'll say that choose the format, the n type or n of m, that is, it will say page 1 of 5 or 1 of 2, and whether they want it on the top or the bottom, so choose that, and whether they want certain alignments, if they say make it right or left, you can choose that, and you click OK. And I'll just come to the form view. So you see there's the date added, and maybe the options. Yeah, I don't know where the page numbers are. I think pretty sure it's there somewhere. Because I've got the subform, it could be hiding. But you could do the same thing by going to layout view, and from here you can add the date and time, and you can also add the page numbers. So for some reason the page number is not available here. I'm not sure why, but you can go to design view and you should be able to get that from there. Now I'll just delete this. Now if you got a question where they say add an existing field to your form, so I'm in the layout view right now, right? And so there is this existing field, so you click it, and which one did I delete? Employee ID, and you can just double click on it and it's added, or you can drag it and then I can move it if I want. So that's it for form, and we've got the last element to look at is the report. So creating reports, the kind of questions they'll ask you is they'll say maybe it's on clicked on employees table and they'll say create, and instead of going to the report wizard, sometimes they might just say click on report and it creates a report right away, and then you can save it. So that's one idea. And that should be enough for that exam point of view, because they don't want to do too much complicated things. So another time they might say create a report for orders. So if I go to or products, say create, you can also use the report wizard, and then you choose the products if it's not listed there, and I can click next, next, and then if they say that you need to sort, then from here you can sort it by whatever product name or price or whatever they ask you. If they do, a lot of times they'll just say leave the defaults, click next, and they'll also, then nothing to change here. If they tell you, then you can change the orientations, next. If they say that choose a certain style, you can choose that, next, give it a name, whatever name they give you, and then finish it, and the report is created. I'm going to close the print preview because a lot of the questions that you'll have will be mostly in the layout view, and they might ask you questions like change the form, the layout, the colors to some other colors. So in the report tools format, there is this auto format button, and they'll again give you a name. They'll say change it to like track. A lot of times it might be on the top itself, so usually you should see it on the top. That's where the options should be. They might ask you questions about saying that change the label, the product ID, to something else, and sometimes you might be just able to write over it, but it may not work. Like up here it might work, but in reality maybe if it doesn't work, then you can right click on it, and then you can go to properties, and then in the name or the caption you can change the caption. From product ID, I can give it any code, so I can say product code, and I can close this window, and I've changed it. A lot of time in the report, the date and the page numbers are automatically added, but if they said that you should do that, then you can go with the inserting time or the page numbers, so it's there. You can also insert logos, so I can click on logo and then go to wherever the logo is, and it's added. And in the exam you might find that the logo is there and it might already been clicked on, and they'll say change the logo. So then you just click on the logo button in the report tools, and if you are not there, make sure you come to the layout view, or maybe even the design view, but the layout view is a little easier. And then click on logo, and then go to wherever the logo is, and then change it as you need it. If a question comes up where they want you to do like a subtotal for any column, so say up here for price, so I can click on price, and you see there's a totals button here. I click it, and I can choose sum or whatever else they want it to, and it will put a totals there for you. And it's there, and I can always go back and remove the check mark, and the will be removed. So all you need to do is make sure you click on the heading, and then you can click on there. Another question in the report you might get is about conditional formatting. In Excel, you've got that feature, so you might have, like, they might say that put a condition on these numbers so that if you see a number over 20, make it red in color or whatever it might be. Or so I can go to conditional, which is under the report layout, conditional, and then field value is less than. So whatever the condition is, you need to understand that part. Say, oh no, I need to, yeah, less than. Say I'll do a less than 30. Make it red color, and I'll click OK. So now you see wherever it is less than 30, it will be red in color. So whatever the condition is, you just need to know. You click on that. I think you see if you click on the heading, the conditional formatting is not available. You click here, and then the conditional formatting is available. Whatever the condition is, less than or greater than, put the number, and then choose the color, and that should do it. And I can delete that condition if I want. And you can also sort certain things together. So say for example, I wanted to sort it by the price. I can click on it and I can sort it, and I can choose to add the sorting. Like, you usually won't get these type of questions, but if you ever did, so you can go through that. And a lot of these things you can also do it from design view. And so you see, if I click on price, I can even set the conditional formatting, but you need to make sure now you don't click in the page header section. You need to be in the details section, and then you choose conditional formatting. And you see from here you can also do the group sort, and you can also put the totals, which has already been added here. And there is also the option to change the logo, adding page numbers, and also adding dates and time. And this button here is to add a title to your report. So if I click it, you see it puts the title there also along with there. So I can do that. And if I wanted to delete any of them, I can just click on it and hit the delete button. And usually in the exam you'll find that it's already selected. You just have to hit the delete button. And I can close this now. I can say yes to saving it. And the reports are usually with that symbol. So that symbol is for reports, that is for form, that is for tables, and this is for query. In this case it saves on the side query, but you just be aware of it if they ever tell you to open something or delete something. You can also take your information from a table, and you can export it to Word or Excel. So if the table's usually it's open, you go to external data, then look in the category for export, because you see in the import there is the Excel button, and also in the export there is an Excel button. So usually the question is for export, so you click on export, Excel, and just they'll say leave the defaults as it is, so you don't need to touch it, and just click OK, and then you can close it, and that's it. You've exported the file to Excel. If it's for Word, then you can use Microsoft Word for that. If you wanted to print any of these things, you can go to Office button and then choose print, and it will print it, whether it's a report, query, tables, whatever it might be. We just got a few more things to finish, and you would be ready to actually be confident in taking the Access exam. So they might ask you a question about creating labels. So if I have first name, last name, the job title and telephone number, so I can actually create labels from Access. So you go to create and you see a button called labels in the report. So you click it and they'll usually tell you to not to touch the defaults. If they do tell you specific product number or manufacturer, you can choose that, but usually they will not bother you with that. So you just click next, and these are just basic font size information. Click next, and because I had already clicked on that employees table, it's already there, which in the exam it would be. And then they'll say choose the first name, and then they'll say put a space and then add the last name, and then they'll say on the next line, so I'll hit enter, and they'll say on the next line you can put their employee ID or whatever it might be, their city, so I can just add it, and then next. And they might say that this is for sorting. They might say that sorted by employee ID, or they say sorted by first name, so I'll just add it, next, and then finish it, and my label's ready. And if they ask you to print the label, there is the print button here. If they ask you to print the report, usually you see the print button there too. And that's it in terms of creating labels and printing. I can close this and close this. Last few base simple things I just want to point out. If they ask you a question about creating switchboard, so in the database tools you'll see the switchboard manager, and this message will come up that you haven't used a switchboard, and you say yes to it, and then you can edit the switchboard. They may not ask you this question, but I just want to point out if they want you to go somewhere, you can go there. Other thing just to keep in mind, in the database tools, if they ask you a question about analyzing tables, you can go there. If they ask you a question about analyze performance, you can come here. And also database documenter. So you just come to database tools and you just have to click on these buttons, and usually they'll tell you if they want you to do more. And in here there's also an option to encrypt with password. So I think I've pretty much covered all the important things that you need to know. If you need to study this a little bit more detail, please go and watch the first 4 videos of my Access 2007-2010 series. That will prepare you better for this. So I wish you all the best for your exam. Thank you.